He walked into the cafe thinking it would be just another failed blind date. But what happened that evening changed his entire life forever. A little girl he had never seen before walked straight up to his table, looked him in the eyes, and whispered something that froze him in place. That single sentence would uncover a truth he wasn't ready to face and lead him toward a love he never expected. But before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The evening sun dipped low behind the city skyline, painting streaks of amber and gold across the windows of the Willow Street Cafe. Inside, the gentle hum of conversation blended with the faint sound of jazz music. At a table by the window, Ethan Cole sat alone, absently stirring his coffee as the candle on his table flickered softly in front of him. He checked his watch for what felt like the 100th time. 7:42 p.m. His date was supposed to arrive at 42 minutes late, not exactly a great sign. He sighed, leaning back against his chair, watching couples laugh and talk around him. Blind dates. He never liked them, but his best friend Noah had insisted, saying he needed to start living again. Ethan wasn't sure what that meant. Living again? He had a career. He had success. But maybe Noah was right. Success didn't mean much when every night ended in silence. He glanced once more at the empty chair across from him, half tempted to just pay his bill and leave. That's when he noticed a small figure walking toward him. It wasn't a woman, it was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old, dark curls bouncing as she walked, a tiny pink headband on her head, a determined expression on her face. Her small sneakers squeaked slightly on the wooden floor as she weaved between tables, clutching a tiny purse decorated with stickers. She stopped right next to his table and looked up at him with the seriousness of a grown-up. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice almost musical. "Are you Mr. Ethan?" Ethan blinked in surprise. Yes, I am. And who might you be?" "I'm Emma," she said proudly, standing a little taller. "My mommy told me to tell you she's sorry she's late. She's parking the car. She said you might leave, and I should tell you not to. She said she's really, really sorry." For a moment, Ethan didn't know how to react. Then, without realizing it, he smiled, the first real smile of the evening. "Your mommy sent you all the way in here to find me?" Emma nodded confidently. "She showed me your picture on her phone. She said you'd be the man sitting by the window with a candle. So I looked and found you." "I'm very good at finding people," Ethan chuckled softly. "You're definitely a professional detective." The little girl giggled, clearly proud. "Do you want me to wait with you?" "Mommy said it's okay because you're not a stranger. You're her friend." Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. "You can sit right there, Detective Emma." She climbed into the chair with great effort, legs swinging, as she finally managed to sit upright. Once she settled, she placed her little purse on the table and looked at him seriously again. "Mommy says I'm not supposed to talk too much. But sometimes I forget," Ethan laughed quietly. "That's okay. Sometimes grown-ups talk too much too," Emma nodded wisely. "Mommy says talking helps people feel less lonely." "Are you lonely?" The question caught Ethan off guard. He hesitated, then replied gently, "Sometimes, yes, but not right now." Emma smiled, satisfied with that answer. "Good. I don't like when people are lonely. It makes their eyes sad." Before Ethan could say anything more, the cafe door opened again. A woman hurried in, slightly out of breath, scanning the room with worried eyes. When her gaze landed on their table, she froze, relief washing over her face. "Emma!" she exclaimed, walking quickly toward them. "Sweetheart, I told you to wait by the door." Emma's eyes widened. "I did. But then I saw him and I wanted to help." The woman sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She was beautiful, not in the way magazines showed, but in the quiet, real way of someone who had weathered storms and was still standing. Her blonde hair was tied in a messy bun, her clothes simple but neat, and her eyes, those kind, tired, hazel eyes, instantly caught Ethan's attention. "I am so sorry," she said quickly. "You must be Ethan. I'm Sophie. And this is my daughter Emma, who apparently doesn't listen to instructions." Ethan smiled warmly. "It's perfectly fine. She delivered the message better than anyone else could have. Sophie shook her head, clearly embarrassed. The parking lot was a nightmare, and then the machine wouldn't take my card. I looked up and she was already inside. "I'm really sorry. Please don't apologize," Ethan said sincerely. "I'm just glad you both made it." Sophie hesitated for a moment before sitting down, placing Emma beside her. "I should have told you earlier that I have a daughter. I wasn't trying to hide it, Ethan raised a hand gently. "You don't need to explain, honestly." But Sophie shook her head. "I do. Most men disappear when they find out. I guess I was just hoping to meet someone who'd talk to me first, before deciding who I am." Ethan's expression softened. He looked at Emma, who was now carefully rearranging sugar packets into little towers, and then back at Sophie. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think any woman who's raising a child that polite and confident has already proven she's someone worth knowing." Sophie blinked, her lips parting slightly in surprise. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her with that kind of sincerity. "Thank you," she whispered. The waiter approached, and they ordered dinner. What could have been an awkward meal quickly turned into laughter. Emma entertained them with stories about her preschool teacher, her best friend, Mia, who always steals crayons, and her dream to own a rainbow puppy. Ethan found himself laughing, not out of politeness, but genuine amusement. Every time he looked at Sophie, he caught her smiling shyly, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Halfway through dinner, Emma leaned toward Ethan and asked innocently, "Do you like kids?" Sophie nearly dropped her fork. "Emma!" Ethan laughed, covering his mouth. "That's a very direct question." Emma nodded solemnly. "Mommy says it's good to ask questions. Mrs. Peterson next door says Mommy needs to find someone who likes kids." "Do you?" Sophie groaned softly. "Emma, honey, maybe let's talk about something else." But Ethan interrupted gently, smiling at the little girl. "Yes, Emma, I like kids, especially brave detectives who help their moms." Emma grinned widely, satisfied. "Good, then you can stay." Sophie covered her face, mortified. "I am so sorry. She's been listening to way too many grown-up conversations lately." Ethan chuckled. "It's fine. She's just honest. That's rare these days." Dinner went on effortlessly after that. The conversation moved from movies to travel to favorite foods. Ethan learned that Sophie worked as a kindergarten teacher, juggling long hours and motherhood with quiet strength. He told her about his architecture firm, how he designed buildings but sometimes forgot to enjoy the world he built. By dessert, the cafe was nearly empty. Emma was coloring quietly on the paper menu with crayons the waiter had brought her. Sophie leaned back, watching her daughter. "She's everything to me," she said softly. "Sometimes I worry I'll never find someone who understands that she's not a complication. She's the best part of me." Ethan followed her gaze. "Anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve either of you." Their eyes met, and for a long, quiet moment, the noise of the cafe seemed to fade. Later, as Sophie gathered their things, Emma yawned sleepily. Ethan stood to help, handing Sophie her coat. "It was really nice meeting you," he said sincerely. "I'm glad I didn't leave." Sophie smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "Me too." As they walked toward the door, Emma turned back and whispered to Ethan, "You should come see us again." "Mommy smiles when you talk." Ethan's heart softened instantly. "I'll remember that, Detective Emma." And then they were gone, the little girl's laughter fading into the cool night air. Ethan stood by the window, staring out, as the candle on his table flickered lower and lower. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He didn't know it yet, but that small whisper from a little girl had just changed the direction of his entire life. The next few weeks passed in a way Ethan hadn't expected, quietly, yet profoundly. After that evening at the cafe, he couldn't stop thinking about Sophie and the little girl who had walked into his life with so much innocence and light. There was something about that night that stayed with him, the way Emma's laughter filled the room, or how Sophie's eyes softened when she spoke about her daughter. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down he knew it was more. A few days later, Ethan found himself typing a message he rewrote 3 times before pressing send. "Would you and Emma like to join me for coffee this weekend? There's a park near the cafe. They have good pancakes." The reply came minutes later. "We'd love to." Emma heard pancakes and is already excited. Saturday? That Saturday morning, the world felt different, brighter, lighter. The park was filled with families, laughter, and the faint smell of coffee drifting from a small corner cafe. Sophie waved when she spotted him, her hair pulled back, wearing a soft cream sweater. Emma ran ahead, holding a small stuffed rabbit in one hand. "Mr. Ethan!" she shouted with the joy only a child could carry. "I brought my bunny to meet you." "Her name's Snowy." Ethan crouched to her level. "It's an honor, Snowy. I've heard good things about you." Emma giggled, clearly pleased that he took her seriously. Sophie arrived moments later, slightly out of breath, smiling. "Sorry, she's unstoppable once she spots someone she knows." "I don't mind at all," Ethan said. "She reminds me of sunlight." Impossible to ignore, Sophie smiled shyly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. That's one way to describe her. They spent the morning walking around the park. Emma insisted on showing Ethan the duck pond, the swings, and her secret flower spot, which was really just a patch of wild daisies. But to her, it was magic. Sophie watched as Ethan helped Emma collect petals and build tiny flower crowns. Something about it made her chest ache. Not from sadness, but from the unfamiliar warmth that came from seeing someone treat her daughter with genuine care. Not obligation. For years, she had faced the world with her chin up, doing everything alone, every doctor visit, every bedtime story, every tear. Seeing Ethan laugh with Emma, his tie loosened and shoes muddy. She realized how long it had been since she'd felt this kind of peace. After Emma ran off to chase butterflies, Sophie turned to Ethan quietly. "She's usually shy with new people," she said. "But with you, it's different," Ethan smiled faintly. "She makes it easy," Sophie's voice lowered, thoughtful. "It's been just the 2 of us for 4 years. Her father left before she was even born. I used to think it was my fault. But then Emma came along and changed everything. She gave my life meaning. I just stopped expecting anyone else to understand that." Ethan looked at her, not with pity, but respect. "You didn't lose anything, Sophie. You built something. You built her. That's strength, not failure." Her eyes softened, and for a brief moment, she couldn't speak. Later that afternoon, they sat at an outdoor cafe by the lake. Emma was busy feeding pieces of bread to the ducks, while Sophie and Ethan sipped coffee. The silence between them easy and natural. Sophie asked, "Do you have any family here?" Ethan paused. "My parents moved away a few years ago. My sister lives abroad. It's mostly just me and my work." She tilted her head. "That sounds lonely," he gave a faint smile. "It is, but I guess I got used to it." Sophie leaned forward slightly. "You don't seem like someone who's meant to be alone." The words struck him deeper than he expected. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her, really looked at her, realizing how she saw something in him that most people never bothered to. When they finally stood to leave, Emma took Ethan's hand naturally, like she'd known him forever. Sophie hesitated for a moment, but didn't stop her. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Emma looked up at Ethan and said, "Mr. Ethan, you should come to my school someday. We're doing a play about the moon, and I'm the star." Ethan laughed. "Then how could I miss that? I'll be there, front row." That night, after Sophie put Emma to bed, she sat by the window and stared out at the streetlights. She wanted to tell herself it was just friendship, a kind man being kind. But the truth was, Ethan's presence had started to feel like something more, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: safety. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in his apartment, surrounded by blueprints and paperwork he couldn't focus on. His phone buzzed, a photo from Sophie. Emma was holding her drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. At the top, in messy crayon letters, it said, "Mommy, me, and Mr. Ethan." He felt his chest tighten. He hadn't realized how empty his home felt until now. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Saturday pancakes, evening walks, Occasional dinners at Sophie's small apartment filled with Emma's giggles and the smell of home-cooked pasta. Ethan learned how to read bedtime stories, how to fix broken toys with tape, and how to listen to Emma's endless questions about everything from stars to cats. He was terrible at playing dolls, but he tried anyway. Emma declared him almost good. Sophie noticed how her daughter's laughter had grown louder since Ethan started visiting. And she noticed something else, the way Ethan's eyes softened every time he looked at her, as though he saw more than what she showed the world, but with closeness came fear. One evening, after dinner, Sophie asked him to stay a moment after Emma went to bed. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she set down her teacup. "Ethan, before this goes any further, I need to ask something honest," she said. He nodded, listening. "Are you sure you want this? Me, Emma, the package deal. Because it's not easy. It's never just dinners and walks. It's school projects, sleepless nights, tantrums, and responsibilities that aren't even yours. And if you're not ready, I'd rather you tell me now than later." Ethan was quiet for a long time. He looked around, the tiny apartment filled with soft colors, children's books, and drawings taped to the wall. He realized that this chaos, this warmth, felt more real than any high-rise building he'd ever designed. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said finally, "but I know I don't want to walk away." Sophie looked down, her eyes glistening. "That's a brave answer," he smiled faintly. "Maybe it's a selfish one." She shook her head. "No, it's honest. And that's something I haven't had in a long time." The night ended quietly, but something between them had changed. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became a constant in their lives. He helped Emma build a cardboard rocket ship one weekend and attended her school play the next, the one where she played the star. She spotted him from the stage and waved mid-performance, shouting, "That's Mr. Ethan." The audience laughed, but Ethan just smiled, clapping the loudest. After the show, Sophie found him waiting outside with flowers, one bouquet for her and a tiny one for Emma. Emma squealed, hugging his leg. "You came! You really came!" "Of course," Ethan said softly. "I promised the star I would." That night, as Sophie put Emma to bed, her daughter whispered, "Mommy, I think Mr. Ethan makes you smile more." Sophie kissed her forehead. "Does he?" Emma nodded sleepily. "Yeah, you don't look tired when he's here." Sophie turned off the light, standing silently by the door for a long moment. Maybe her daughter was right, but love, Sophie knew, wasn't simple. It was layered, filled with both beauty and fear. She'd been left before. She couldn't bear to be left again, not with Emma's heart in the mix. Still, every time Ethan walked into their home, carrying laughter and warmth with him, a quiet part of her started to believe in something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope, and somewhere deep down, Ethan felt it too. He'd spent years building structures that touched the sky, yet never realized the most important foundation he'd ever build was happening right here, in a small apartment. Over bedtime stories and shared dinners, he didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long while, Ethan wasn't afraid to find out. He had no idea that soon a single whispered sentence from Emma would change everything and remind him what love truly meant. The rain fell in fine silver threads across the cafe window, the kind that make the world outside look softer, blurred, and full of memories you never meant to keep. Ethan sat at his old corner table again, the one where everything had started months ago. The scent of roasted coffee and wet earth filled the air, but his cup was untouched, its steam long gone. He had been coming here for weeks, sometimes hoping to see her, sometimes afraid that he would. The waiter recognized him now, the man who waits but never orders dessert. A small smile, a nod, and silence followed. Ethan didn't mind. He was thinking of Sophie. He had replayed that last night over and over, the one where she'd asked if he was serious. Her words had cut through his calm like glass through water. He hadn't known how to answer. And in his silence she'd walked away. It had been months since then, but her absence wasn't empty, it echoed. Every small thing reminded him of her. A mother crossing the street, holding her child's hand. the smell of vanilla shampoo, the sound of laughter from a child that could have been Emma. He didn't realize when love had become the air he breathed, only that he couldn't find it anymore. He reached for his coat, ready to leave, when a tiny voice called out from behind him, "Mr. Ethan." The sound was small, bright, impossibly familiar. He turned sharply. Emma stood there in a yellow raincoat, hair damp, clutching a stuffed bunny. Her cheeks were rosy from the cold. "Emma?" His voice cracked a little. "What are you doing here?" "Where's your mom?" She ran up and threw her arms around his leg before he could react. "Mommy's paying the taxi man. She said we could get cocoa here today. I told her you like cocoa too." He froze, not because of her words, but because of how easily she said them. Like he'd never been gone. Sophie stepped in moments later, shaking rain from her umbrella. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Ethan," she whispered. The name sounded like it hurt to say. I didn't know you still came here," she said softly. "I didn't know you did either," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Seems this place remembers us both." For a moment, neither spoke. The cafe's quiet hum filled the space between them. Spoons clinking, low chatter, a soft melody playing from the radio. Emma, unaware of the tension, climbed onto a chair and began talking to the waiter about whipped cream. Sophie looked down, fidgeting with her hands. "You look tired," she said finally. Ethan gave a short laugh. "I could say the same. Motherhood doesn't come with much rest, huh?" She smiled faintly. "No, it doesn't." He wanted to say everything. That he missed them, that he had been wrong to pull away, that he had spent months realizing that peace without them was just another kind of loneliness. But before he could speak, Emma returned with 2 mugs. "Mommy says you like it extra hot," she said, sliding one toward him. Ethan stared at the mug and then at Sophie. Her eyes flickered with apology, or maybe hope. He couldn't tell. "Thank you," he said softly to Emma, then looked at Sophie. "Can we talk? Just for a bit?" Sophie hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." They sat in silence for a while, the rain softening outside. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Not of you. Of what it meant to care again. I've been alone for so long that I forgot how to make room for someone else." Sophie stared at him quietly. "Ethan, you didn't just walk away from me. You walked away from her too. She asked for you every night for weeks. I didn't know what to say to her." "I know." His voice cracked. "I saw the drawing she made, the one with us holding hands. I kept it. I didn't throw it away." Her eyes softened. "You kept it?" "I couldn't," he exhaled shakily, "because it reminded me of the one thing I wanted and didn't have the courage to hold on to." Sophie looked away, her eyes glistening. "You can't just come back, Ethan. You can't walk in and fix months of silence with one speech." "I'm not trying to fix it," he said. "I'm just trying to start over, this time without running when things get real." She didn't reply right away. Emma climbed onto her lap, yawning. "Mommy, can we take Mr. Ethan to the park again?" "I still have his paper airplane." Sophie froze. Ethan smiled sadly. "You kept that?" Emma nodded proudly. "You said it flies only when you believe." "I believed." Sophie closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Ethan leaned closer, his voice trembling. "You asked me once if I was serious. I didn't know how to answer then. But I do now. I'm serious about you, Sophie. About her. About this messy, beautiful life that scares me, because it's real." She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "Why now?" "Because I realized," he said quietly, "that I wasn't afraid of losing love. I was afraid of being loved right." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she laughed softly. That kind of half-sob, half-laugh people make when the walls finally crack. "You're still terrible at timing," she whispered. "I know," he smiled. "But I'm learning." The rain had stopped by the time they left the cafe. The street shimmered under the lamplight, puddles reflecting the glow of shop windows. Ethan walked beside them, Emma's small hand in his. The air smelled like beginnings. "Do you think we can try again?" he asked softly. Sophie didn't answer immediately. She looked at Emma, skipping between them, then at him. "Maybe we don't have to try again," she said. "Maybe we just keep walking and see where it leads." He nodded, his heart steady for the first time in years. They walked on, slow, quiet, but together. The rain had washed the world clean, and for Ethan, it felt like something inside him had finally done the same. A year passed almost quietly, the way a flower opens in sunlight, slow, steady, unnoticed, until one day it's just there in full bloom. Ethan could barely believe how much could change in 12 months. The lonely apartment that once echoed with silence was now alive with small noises, the laughter of a little girl, the clatter of breakfast plates, the hum of life returning to a place that had forgotten how to breathe. Every morning started with Sophie's soft humming in the kitchen and Emma's voice shouting, "Mr. Ethan, you're late again," even when he wasn't. He'd pretend to groan, stumble out of bed, and chase her down the hallway, her giggles echoing like music. What had once felt like an unfamiliar life now felt like home. Sundays were their favorite. They always went to the lakeside cafe, the same one where it had all begun. The staff knew them now. They called Emma the little boss because she ordered everyone's cocoa. The manager always brought them extra cookies, winking at Sophie. Sometimes they'd all just sit there quietly, watching the sunlight ripple on the water. No grand plans, no rushing, just belonging. Ethan often found himself staring at Sophie when she wasn't looking. She still had that same quiet strength, that same calm that steadied him when the world felt heavy. He admired her even more now, not just for her kindness, but for the fierce love she carried in her heart. The kind that made everything around her warmer. One evening, as they walked back from the cafe, Emma danced ahead of them, splashing in puddles. Sophie slipped her hand into Ethan's. "You've changed," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "I had good teachers." Sophie laughed, the sound light as wind chimes. "You really love her, don't you?" He glanced at Emma, twirling under the streetlight. "More than I thought possible." "Both of you." They reached their house, small, cozy, walls filled with framed photos and drawings. On the living room wall hung Emma's old stick-figure drawing, the same one she'd once tucked into his pocket months ago. Except now, Sophie had written something beneath it in cursive. "Sometimes love finds its way back." That night, while Sophie read Emma a bedtime story, Ethan sat in the kitchen, staring at the small velvet box hidden in his jacket. His heart thudded with nerves. He had rehearsed this moment for weeks, yet it still felt like the first time all over again, that same trembling mix of fear and hope. When Sophie came out, she noticed the candlelight and the soft music playing. "What's this?" she asked, a smile tugging at her lips. Ethan stood up, his hands slightly shaking. "Something I should have said a long time ago." Before she could speak, he knelt down, right there in their tiny kitchen, and held out the box. "Sophie," he began, his voice quiet but sure, "the day I met you, I thought I was just meeting someone kind. I didn't know I was meeting the two people who'd change everything I believed about life, about love, about family. You gave me a reason to stay. And you," his eyes flicked toward Emma's room, "you both taught me what home really means." So, he opened the box, a simple, elegant ring glinting in the light. "Will you marry me?" Sophie's eyes filled instantly. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Ethan, Before she could finish, a small voice came from the hallway. "Wait!" Emma stood there, rubbing her sleepy eyes, holding her stuffed bunny. "You can't do it yet," Ethan blinked. "I can't?" Emma marched up to him, serious as ever. "You have to ask me first." He smiled softly, kneeling to her level. "You're right. I almost forgot." He held her tiny hand. "Emma, if I marry your mummy, that means I'll be your family too. That means pancake mornings, school runs, bedtime stories, all of it. But only if you want that. Is it okay with you?" Emma thought for a long moment, tilting her head. Then she whispered, "Only if you never make Mummy cry again." Ethan's voice broke. "I promise." "Never again." Satisfied, Emma nodded solemnly. "Then it's okay." She turned to Sophie. "Now you can say yes, Mummy." Sophie laughed through her tears, the sound trembling and beautiful. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Ethan, I'll marry you." The next moment blurred, laughter, tears, Emma jumping between them shouting, "We're a team now!" Ethan slipped the ring onto Sophie's finger, his heart thundering as she pulled him into a hug. The three of them stood there, tangled, crying, laughing, a small family finally whole. Weeks later, their wedding was held at the same cafe, under twinkling lights and soft music. The cafe owner himself insisted on decorating it. The regulars came to watch, the same people who'd once seen Ethan sitting alone at that corner table. Now he stood there holding Sophie's hands, Emma beside them scattering petals. As Sophie walked toward him in her simple white dress, Ethan's vision blurred. Not from nerves, but from awe. Every part of this moment, every smile, every breath, every tear had led them here. When the vows were said, it wasn't just about promises. It was about gratitude. Gratitude for second chances, for patience, for the quiet courage of love that grows in ordinary days. Later that evening, after the guests left, Ethan sat outside the cafe with Emma on his lap. She was half asleep, mumbling softly. "Mr. Ethan," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore, right?" He smiled, brushing her hair back. "No, sweetheart, not anymore." Sophie came out, her dress catching the glow of the lanterns. She sat beside them, resting her head on his shoulder. They watched the lake together. "The same lake where everything began," Ethan whispered. "Funny, isn't it? All this started because a little girl walked up to a stranger and said hello." Sophie smiled through quiet tears. She always did have good instincts. The night was calm, the water shimmering under the moon. In that stillness, Ethan realized that sometimes life doesn't give you perfect beginnings. It gives you second chances disguised as ordinary moments. And when you finally have the courage to hold on, you find that love was never about finding the right time. It was about staying through every wrong one until the right moment arrives. As the lights dimmed and the cafe door closed for the night, a small voice, half asleep, whispered against his chest, "I love you." "Daddy," Ethan's breath caught. His eyes stung with tears he didn't fight. "I love you too, Emma," he whispered, holding her closer. "More than you'll ever know." And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a man who'd been given a second chance. He felt like a man who was finally home.